All right, guys, welcome. This is On Track, Off Track podcast with Victor Portogola,
And I'm Jared Kahlo.
and today we have a special guest. We have Daniel Velez. He's a automotive and industrial designer. So we're here to interview him. Thank you for coming, Daniel.
Thanks to you guys. Pretty excited about it.
Thanks. And just so you know, the interest of um, full disclosure, we did this earlier, but the connection wasn't too good. So this is second time over here.
Exactly.
But let's get started. So take us back to the beginning. How did you get into design, essentially?
Well, into design, actually, it was a very, very strange moment because I didn't know anything about design because in Colombia, where I'm from, design doesn't have like that whole surrounding and design is just countless. So if you wanted to do cars, since my dad gave me the passion for cars and my mom gave me the artistic part, like making me draw and with crayons and creativity and plaster and everything. Everyone told me like, no, you have to be an engineer, mechanical engineer. So I went into mechanical engineer, which was the worst decision ever because I'm a donkey in math, and I did only one semester actually, and I knew it like as soon as I got to uni. Like first day was introduction day. We went over like all the program of every lesson and stuff, and I was like, this is not for me. And I had an appointment with the program coordinator, and he said like, boy, you messed up. I was like, oh, okay. And that was the first time I've heard like actually about design, but it was product design. So I had to go through one semester of mechanical engineer, which was like really, really bad. I got to the exams and I just like, I remember one exam, it was like physics exam. I saw it and I studied my ass off. I started, really hard with everyone, blah, 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 and I was okay. I think I'm pretty prepared for this. I wasn't. I saw it and I just stood up, put my name in. He was like, you're not gonna even try. And I was like, it's better not to. Look, I already messed up my name, so. And I started doing product design, but then 2 years after that, doing product design, I met my mentor. He was a designer in Mitsubishi, Lancia, Fiat, and he had just came back from Italy. He was Argentinian, and he was doing a workshop here in Colombia. And that's when I saw it, and I was like, okay, this is finally it. This is what I want. Because obviously I started with paint and it was crazy and I had a lot of fun. I did a lot of buses. I don't know why, but I did a lot of buses. Easier shapes, you know?
Yeah.
And I told him, like, this is what I want to do. Can you help me out? And he said, like, I'm just coming back from Italy. I can teach you, but I cannot give you a diploma or anything. So if you want, you can come to Argentina and we'll try. And then you'll see if you want to do this. And I said, okay. I had a pretty big talk with my mom and my dad. And they said, okay, are you sure? Because we're taking chances here, but if you're sure, go for it. And fortunately, I had that support, and I went to Argentina for a year and a half, where I learned and worked with him. And then, I knew English. I didn't even know about Italy at the time. And I got into CCS, which is College for Creative Studies in Detroit. And I was very excited because I said, all right, US, fantastic, General Motors, Ford, blah, blah, blah. And as soon as I went into the studio and told him, like, I got into a CCS, like, he just stood up and kicked my ass. And like, what are you saying? You have to go to Italy. Italy is where they do cars, blah, blah, blah. That's the motherland. Like, all right. And that's how I ended up in Italy, doing transportation design.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what did you want to do? Like when you went to the college, like, what did you want to do? Did you want to do more about like cars, motorcycles, buses, like you said? What was it about that that you wanted to do?
I was just excited about doing cars. Like for me,
Cars.
yeah, it was obviously the dream, you know, because you saw them, and then obviously here in my country, a lot of people thought at the time and still think that design is like tuning, you know.
Yeah.
So it's like, oh yeah, like this, that, and learning about like also the history of the car and the automotive industry. That was like my main focus. Like, yeah, improving my skills and going, I don't know, to work to Fiat for Fiat or something like that. That was like the dream. But I mean, it was a huge cultural difference and getting to know the world of automotive design that basically regrouped everything I dreamed of, you know.
Yeah.
So I at the moment I was open for everything, and
Hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
still I'm still at that point because I mean there are some projects nowadays that even if it's not cars, you just get to know the project and stuff. You say that's exciting, even if it's I don't know a service or a product that. So since I came to Italy, it's been like an open mind situation.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting that, the automotive industry and working with cars, especially on the design side, but even on the business side of things, like what me and Victor went to go study in Italy, it's something that brings you around the world, and it's something that you have to be super passionate and super invested in wanting to do. And I imagine there are going to be people out here listening that have dreams of being, an automotive designer, and they probably hear you talking about this relationship with your mentor, and from the conversation today and our previous conversations, it's very clear that he played a major part in you getting to this point in your career. How did you cultivate that relationship? Was that something that just fell in your lap, or was it something that you went and seeked out to find a mentor? And how did you develop that relationship? Because it's obviously been so valuable.
Well, it just came to me because obviously I had the chance to go to this workshop, which at the time we didn't. We were bankrupt at the moment. It was a terrible phase for my family, but it was actually a good situation because it brought up like the best of us. But it was actually my mom's best friend. She saw it and she talked to my mom because she knew that since I was a kid, I was always drawing and drawing and drawing cars, 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 and she actually paid for that for me. And then I met my mentor there, and at that moment, okay, he was like God for me, you know, because it's like this guy, he comes from Italy, he has worked in Mitsubishi, Mercedes, Fiat, Lancia, and I was like, damn, and he's gonna be my mentor. So boom, and then I went to Argentina, and it was 24/7 next to him. Obviously, learning. That was like the first time because he was working also with Italy at the time, freelancing and stuff. So, I mean, you could hear him in his phone calls talking Italian, drawing, photoshopping. You were like, damn. And in the studio, they were doing a project for Renault because Gustavo Fosco, rest in peace, he was one of the Argentinian designers in the Techno Center in Patrick Leclement's like period of time. So he sponsored a project, and the other guys were doing clay models. So that was like the full approach for me, and I was every day for me
Hmm.
was amazing. And then learning about all the other brands that maybe I mean like Alfa Romeos. I knew Alfa Romeos, but just a bit, you know, because we didn't have that kind of history and cultural like approach to automotive design other than the models that you saw on the street. So for me
Yeah.
it was crazy. So that cultivated our relationship throughout the years. Then obviously I went to Italy. But we talk. Every now and then we talk. He's back in Italy now, so yeah, I saw him a month ago, so it was great because then in Italy, when I got there, he introduced me to all of his friends. They're all great designers, and it was just excitement for me.
Nice.
And a follow-up question, you mentioned that certain cars like Alfa Romeo you didn't really have so much exposure to when you were a kid. Can you tell us what maybe a couple cars are when you were a kid that really inspired you and kind of drew up that passion for automotive design?
First one, the Renault 4. That car was something, because obviously it was different to the others, it was a small thing, and then the gearbox. For me, it was a spaceship.
Mm-hmm.
What? It was crazy. And I was fortunate that my dad is a bargain guy, so in the morning he left with a car, and in the afternoon he came with another one. So we had a lot of cars, a lot of cars. So I got to know, a lot of them like that, and the differences in between SUVs and sedans and like that. Another two cars that were amazing that I loved, and it's not because they're now obviously very desirable cars, but my dad had the luck of owning BM 2002 BMWs. He had
Oh yeah.
both the touring and the normal one at the same time, both white. And then
Nice.
he sold them because he got the 325i, brand new, and those cars were amazing,
Yeah.
amazing. And those three cars were amazing.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
BMW class of cars was
Dude,
something at the time for
you
sure.
cannot imagine every time I talk to my dad about it, like why? But that's what I was talking about before. Like, yeah, for him, they were really cool cars, and he knew the value, but not historically, you know. So he saw the 325i, so he said, better, new, blah blah blah. And the 325i is a fantastic car, but I mean,
Yeah. Design wise, a 2002 is up there for sure.
the touring was just
Yeah.
My dad and I have the same conversation about his first car. His first car he ever owned was a '70s Oldsmobile Cutlass 442, beautiful big long engine bay, navy or a dark like forest green color with a black hardtop, and he talks about that car still to this day.
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah. Because it's. Then you think about it, and I always tell him like, oh,
Yeah,
if you would have kept them,
Yeah,
that's gold.
for
yeah.
sure.
But
So
anyhow,
I just want to bring it back to your career. Like what did you do once you came to Italy? Where did you work? What were
oh,
you doing?
came to Italy, study at IAT in Turin. In there, obviously, all the teachers are actually active professionals.
Okay.
So yeah, with talking to them and stuff, I ended up in JAC, which is a Chinese brand. And I ended up in JC also because three friends of my mentor were working there, and I knew of the
Okay.
great experience, so I wanted to work with them. And actually, like, one of them is one of my bestest friends in Italy. He's now almost 50. But and I got the opportunity to work with him because I stood like next to him, because I wanted to just suck and everything, and he really, like, straight up, I could work on hard models, which was great. So that company gave me, even if it's low cost Chinese brand, they're trying to bring it up, but that made it even more interesting because the challenge of making a car with less money, and, like, yeah, you have to design the future, but you have 1 cent. So
Yeah.
it was really amazing, and obviously working on clay and hard models, and then actually we got really really cool physical modelers there. There were two guys that came from Bertone that worked even with Nuccio Bertone.
Nice.
One of them was the one who did the wooden the wood scale models.
Okay.
And every time they invited me to their homes, to the places, you went there and they've built everything inside. I mean, I did that, I did that, I did that, and yeah, and it's crazy because the craftsmanship in their hands and everything in the knowledge, it's amazing. And if they tell you something, it's like that.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you should move that 1 millimeter up. And it's like, no, like, go and check it out. Ah, you were right. Yeah, and that completed the whole experience. So I went there, stood 2 years in Changan. Then I joined a company that where I was able to move around in many places. But I was in Chang'an for 2 years, another Chinese company, which nowadays is very, very big. And there I was able to work in concept production, interior and exterior, all the segments, and a lot of plate modeling. It was also great there. I went to Pininfarina in a couple of months here and there in Ferrari, and eventually in between some motorcycle work, because basically I was more focused on cars. But then I switched to my freelance activity and stuff. And since I've been doing work for different clients, I've worked for Piaggio Group, Peugeot Motorcycles, a lot of Indian and Chinese brands, and one of my latest projects was the Zenvo Aurora, which was I was the lead interior designer for that.
Oh, nice. So I just want to bring it back to Pininfarina because it's a very historical and interesting
Yeah,
company. It's based in Italy, but it was bought out by, I believe, Mahindra, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, in India. So, I mean, you definitely probably worked on Italian or cars and then also Indian cars, I would assume at that point,
Yeah.
right? So how was that in the breadth of work? Were you doing like low cost cars as well as like supercars in Pininfarina, or was it localized? What were you doing
But
there?
Pininfarina, you work nowadays. You work in with different several clients. I mean, obviously they have all the know-how. I mean, they're one. They're the well
Yeah,
with Giugiaro. They're the only two design houses that survived. And they really have a lot of know-how, and there's people there that have built and have seen whatever car in history book,
yeah,
you know. Um, and you work in well, I have to say that nowadays, everyone that has in mind to build a car is able to do it. Like you don't have to be in the car industry. I mean, Dyson tried it, and like since in China they said we have to produce electric and we have to become electric, like from one day to another, there were 10,000 new brands of cars.
yeah,
So that's like when Pininfarina and brands like that and studios like that come in, and now like lately you've seen all of the brands they work with, they're new brands or product brands, or yeah, with all of the startup thing going around. So you get to work with everything. I mean, the Battista Pininfarina started in Pininfarina, and then obviously evolved in what Automobile Pininfarina is. But at the same
you worked
time,
on the Batista then, right?
no, but slightly, just because I was working for Mahindra at the time.
Okay, yeah,
Um, so there were like projects like that. So you have some top supercars like that, and then you have production cars and mobility, and there's a mix, a soup of stuff.
yeah,
So you get to work in everything, but with people that have an amount of know-how that it's huge.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
You mentioned that there were all these new brands coming into the market, which is huge for Pininfarina.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me wonder as well, with the rise of kind of the startup automotive company, as you talk about, does that provide more opportunities for young automotive designers that want to get into the industry now that you don't have to just focus on I need to work at Fiat or or with GM or something like that, or
Yeah.
would you say it's similar?
Well, for sure, it provides opportunity, but at the same time, uh, there's many difficulties because obviously, the fact of no knowing how complex it is to design a car from scratch and to build a technical package and everything. And nowadays, obviously, the world runs at a speed that it's super fast. I mean, let's take into account that previously a car would come out and like the development would last 4 years at least, and nowadays everyone's running to get it done in 1 year. So that brings a complexity to the entire project, you know. And then obviously design has changed. Let's say that before people came to, let's say, Pininfarina or Giugiaro, like, please design a car for me, you know. And yeah, there was a briefing, but the design house would decide how would it be. That's why you find out, like, go backwards in time and you see different cars from different design studios, and they don't talk, you
Yeah.
know, the same language. Um, Instead, nowadays you have to think about that the product has to really fit your user, and that the I mean, we don't feel the same as new people for cars, you know. It's like for new people and younger generations, it's like, okay, it's a product. I want it to be cool. I want it to fit my style, and that's it. It'll take me from A to B. Nobody cares if there's a V8, a V12. I mean, it's
Yeah.
less people, you know.
Yeah.
So it has changed. So then, yeah, for sure, it provides a lot of opportunity for newcomers. But it depends on obviously what you want from your point of view as a designer. You know, if
Yeah.
you're really
Yeah.
passionate about cars, uh, maybe a startup, you could see it two ways. It could be a chance to really bring in my what I want to show, or taking into account that you also, I mean, you don't work for yourself. You work for a client. So if your client tells you, I need a mobility product, it's a cube with 4 wheels, and you're a car like fan,
Yeah.
maybe that's not your place.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that.
So just for my because I'm interested in this stuff, right? And I just want to know what project are you, let's say, most proud of, whether it's a car or not.
That's tough because obviously the outcome, it's amazing. I mean, like, if I see the Aurora, I mean, and having the chance to work on the Aurora, that was freaking awesome. I mean,
Yeah.
a 2.8 hypercar, 2.8 million hypercar with a V12, and Christian, the chief designer in Zenvo, and Frederick gave us that chance to work in that, and it was amazing. I mean, the outcome is fantastic. But then I also worked on some really crappy projects, but that I'm proud of because they taught me a lot. You know,
Hmm.
I mean, there were some of the Chinese cars at the beginning that, I mean, I would cry out my eyes because they were ugly, like, not ugly, like, very bad.
Yeah.
They were dirt on wheels. I mean, terrible, but they taught me a lot because, I mean, the mistakes and redoing and redoing and redoing that, and having to really, I mean, it's like you have to design shit, but you have to give your best to design it the best way possible, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you see it at the end, and you think about everything that happened and the many changes, and because of political things, because of the boss woke up one day, and he wanted to flip over the car, and yeah, now you have to do it like that, and overcoming all of that and getting to a result, then you say, "Ah, I'm really proud of it. Not beautiful, but proud of it, you know."
Yeah. Definitely.
So I think it's a sum of all of those factors during your career that make it difficult to choose one.
Yeah. Definitely. There are some automotive design features that have become signatures of designers. You know,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's like the Hoffman kink, let's
Mm-hmm.
say, or you know, there's a few of them like that. Do you have anything like that you can consider like your signature, you know, design point?
Ooh, tough one. That's a tough one. Um, I think that I'm more of a volumetrical guy. I don't
Okay.
like many gimmicks and yeah, like graphic stuff. You know, I'm more for a simple shape, and because I think like we all remember classic and old cars because I mean your mind was able to understand its shape and straight up. You know,
Yeah.
if I ask you, do you remember the Citroen 2CV? You go back immediately to that iconic shape, you know, boom, boom,
Mhm.
you know, or to the Beetle or whatever car it is, you know. Nowadays, if I tell you, do you remember? Can you describe I don't know, a DS3 Citroen? You kind of have a glimpse in your mind of how it looked like, but you cannot, and there's not like an appeal or a feeling towards it, you know. So I think that the simplicity in volumes and stuff, and like having a clean thing, it's obviously sculpted also. That could be my like my preference, but I don't have like a specific signature. And
Yeah.
nowadays it's even more tough because I mean, with security and yeah, all of the yeah, let's say technical things that have been upgraded to make cars more safer and stuff, it's very difficult. And with the platform thing also, no, I mean you have for 8 model cars you have one platform, so it's very difficult to make a distinct signature.
So I have an interesting question that I think is something you just touched on right there, partly regarding the platforms, but also looking at other parts, other trends in the automotive industry, especially in less in the supercar side and more in the mobility side. You know, with electric vehicles not needing a hood, but Tesla still has a hood on their car. So eventually someone's going to make a car without a hood. And, you know, as autonomous vehicles become more and more popular, you have some companies that are making concept cars that don't even have steering wheels and have people in the car all sitting looking at each other like they're on a train car. Um, do you think that, you know, I guess I want to know how you think those aspects are going to play into changing trends in design in cars over the next, you know, 50 years rather than the next 10 years?
Well, I think there's still a long way. There's still a long way because I mean, we've seen lately in the past 10 years, there's been plenty of show cars, of autonomous driving cars, and you usually get the square with four wheels, people looking to each other and stuff. And I don't think people is ready for that. And I think that's why Teslas sell a lot. And you know, like actually, Verve, the new system by Remats, with their new company. Uh, I saw a lot of people criticizing the car, like from a car design point of view. But I think that's in the explanation they gave. It's like we made it look a car because people need still to relate to a car because we
Hmm.
cannot go from four wheels a hood. Cars have been the same since carriages. You had the
Hmm.
horse, you had the front man there riding the horse, then you had the carriage, and then you had your baggage storage. You know,
Yeah.
and that evolved into the car, and that has evolved into electric cars. And it's been like that: four wheels, four doors, or two doors, or whatever it is. But it's power, uh, passenger space, and storage space. You know, and I don't, and people I think still are keen to familiarize with that. You know, you don't want to go in a highway looking backwards.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yeah.
it's strange, and I think that's why there's still a long way on that evolution. The architecture part of a car, it remains the same. So I think yeah, inside there's a lot of change also without having, because I mean there's still a lot of people that don't want to drive anymore. That just, I mean, has evolved, and we're all connected to phones now. So we want to be all the time looking at our phones. Um, so I think there's still a long run of development, but I think like that displacement, uh, it's gonna still be around for a long while, and that's why we don't see this square concept and everyone chatting around blah 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 on the streets. I think people are not ready, and because the cities are not ready yet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, New York's still New York, and if you put a box of that like that in there,
Yeah,
it's
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 gonna
a
get hit.
very different use. It's a very different use. You make the storyline of it, and people all organized, opens the door calmly, blah blah blah, and then you have to take the bike riding guy like passing in front and everything. So I think cities have to evolve with transportation systems, and that's going to determine what's going to be the future.
Yeah, definitely. So, like, what cars have come out recently that are a hit in your opinion, or a miss? Let's say. I think misses would be more of a interesting conversation.
Hmm.
What do you think doesn't
It
work?
depends. It depends on like it's a miss in which aspect, you know.
Let's say, okay, let's say, in my opinion, okay,
Mm-hmm.
the new
Right.
Hyundai Ioniq 6, let's say, okay,
Yeah.
compared to the Ioniq 5, I think it's a miss. It's a crazy, weird egg-looking thing that a lot of people dislike, and it's a weird shape, and
Mm-hmm.
it might be for aerodynamics or whatever. They just want it to be different. But an Ioniq 5 has simple shapes, except for the side. There's a big Z or whatever, but it has these square headlights and stuff like that, and I think that those type of cars. I'm alluding back to what you said before, how you like the simple shapes, and these are more, they have a lot more, let's say, flame surfacing,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
as they said in BMW and back in the day. So, what do you think is coming out nowadays in terms of trends, right? Design trends that are amiss.
If I take your example, I think the Ioniq 5 is a test car. You know,
Okay.
they gave it a go. They had the budget. They gave it a go, and they say, okay, let's do it. Maybe because there's there's always there's always a need for someone to take a direction,
Mm.
because maybe, I mean, you hit it on, and that starts selling, and boom, every brand will go over there, you know
Yeah.
um and like basically the all the EV movement around is like that, so and there's a hit design and everyone runs towards that. And then the other Ionic, maybe you prefer it because of what I've said. You relate it more to a traditional car shape. You know,
Yeah.
you say, okay, modern treatments, modern details, and everything, but it looks like more of a car. The other
Yeah.
thing looks like from a Batman movie.
Yeah.
But I think companies also try that, because if you go first and you win, that's perfect. That's good
Mm.
business. Look, that's nice. I didn't know that. Uh,
um, that's funny.
so it's I think is a yeah, it's an experiment. It's an experiment that you expect to go well, to earn some money if you can. If not, you've gathered information. You
Mm.
know,
Yeah.
Okay.
you know where not to go.
Yeah, definitely.
So
I
that's
remember I remember
Sorry.
watching the premiere of the Bugatti Tourbillon with you, right?
yeah.
I was, we saw it together. And at first, I was very, I would say my first impression was I was disappointed because it looked a lot like the Chiron,
Yeah.
right? They didn't take a huge leap forward. It was an evolution, not a revolution,
Yeah.
right? And then you pointed out some design cues, and then I started really thinking about it, and it really changed my perception of what it is, you know what I mean, and how I liked it. Um, but you have the eye for this because you're a designer, right? The average layman person out on the streets that sees something, they will have an initial view based on the overall design, not the little details there, right? So how when you design a car, right? Do you think about that? Do you think about, okay, there's going to be people that appreciate the little details, but I have to make it more, in general, good looking for the public, let's say, versus, and then, or is it for the buyer, or like how do you approach that, like design brief, let's say?
You approach it like starting from the brief. Once you take a direction, you have to believe in it, and you have to try it in the different sauce. Like you try direction A, B, C, and then working with all the team, you choose. Like obviously, you're always going to be receiving critics, positive and negative critics. But I think the design process and design work, and as a designer, we all try to make from everything the best. Even if it's if it's a Bugatti or if it's a production car.
Yeah.
You try to do the best with what you have, because obviously that's what you have, and you got to make the most out of it. Obviously, when you have an amount of budget that allows you to play with materials and real, you try to bring it out more, and if it makes sense to make it, and like the Bugatti is a perfect example of that. I mean, they're a heritage brand, they have a huge history, they have the money to make it, and they made that's almost an architectural piece. You go and look at the center console, and that's milled completely, and that's a jewel. So, and then in a production car, you try to make your center console as best as you can with whatever you have, and try to make it clear, nice, and beautiful. Obviously, I think for most designers, talking about cars with non-car design people, it's like when I came back, when I go back to Colombia, and my friends told me, oh, look at the car I bought, blah blah blah. What do you think about that? And I look at it, and I was like, oh, in my mind, it's like, oh, that's a piece of shit. I just go, good. You like it? Awesome,
Right.
awesome. Because that's your taste. Who am I?
Yeah. I feel
So
and it's like that, But then, I think like generalizing a little bit, as designers, you try to make the most out of what you have.
so
And go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, speaking of taste, that this is just, kind of getting back to asking about some modern cars. We've avoided wading into the waters of this debate that's been very controversial in the automotive community for a while. I think you both know what I'm going to say, but I need to know, as an automotive designer, now that they're rolling out on the streets, what you think about the new Cybertruck.
I think that's a product. I see the Cybertruck as a product. I mean, obviously, if I see it from the car design point of view,
the less said, the better.
It goes against everything they taught us. It goes against everything I taught us. I mean, I even think about like, how do they let it like roll in the streets? I mean, if you get hit by one of those things, it's gonna chop you off for sure. I mean, that should be sponsored by Gillette or something. That's a razor on wheels. Then performance-wise, obviously in the U.S., it's a huge success, because you have 8-lane highways where you just have to put your foot down and go, and it's an electric car. I mean, boom, it'll go. And it's obviously its functionalities and everything, and the fact it's different, so it's bold and people like it, and blah blah blah. But it's tasteless for me.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
So
No,
I
I
see it
agree.
more as a product than an actual car.
Yeah. Well, I think that really covers very well the interview portion here of today's podcast. Now we're going to get away from the ugly, controversial car design, and we're we're going to jump into our draft segment. This is going to be the first time we've done our draft segment with a guest, and our draft for today is going to be the most influential or the greatest car designers of all time. Since it's three of us, we're each going to choose three this time. So Daniel, since you're our guest, you're welcome to take the first pick here.
All right, I would say, because it's very, very, very difficult to choose. Because I have to say, I mean, design is not about one person. It's about many people involved. So I would say like Patrick Leclerc and like his direction. There were really great designers under him, but I think at that time, fantastic. Bruno Sacco and Mercedes. I mean, the E190, all of those cars were amazing. And obviously, all the Italian movement was great. I mean, choosing one is very difficult, but one of my all-time favorites, it's Paolo Martin. Paolo Martin, okay. Amazing. But I mean, I could go on and on. Like the E30 designer Klaus, his name is Klaus Luthe.
Mm-hmm.
Just a four and an extra one. But I mean, those guys are just names, but they guided so many great designers and that designed like the best cars and the cars that we all love. So I think it's more of a period name than the actual designer, you know?
Mm-hmm. Nice. I agree. I think those are all some great designers. Victor, you can give us your 3 or 4 designers now as well.
So actually, I've a list because I didn't know whether you guys would choose the same ones, but Bruno Sacco is definitely on my list. He's done some great stuff. I mean, and especially his philosophy, you know, horizontal and vertical integration of the model lineup is great. But so I guess my top 3 would be, and they're my favorite. You know, it's hard to choose influential ones because there's too many of them, but these are going to be my favorite ones. In modern times, I really like Frank Stephenson's designs. Mm-hmm. You know, whether it's the redesign of the Cinquecento, the Mini Cooper, the Maserati MC12. You know, his resume goes on. It's really great. The F430 is a great looking piece of design. You know, he had the 360 to work with and still made it look really nice. So I think he would be up there for me. Marcello Gandini, he's, you know, the maestro. He's designed some of my favorite cars ever, whether it's at Lamborghini, with the Miura, with the Countach, Diablos, you know, all those. But then also like the Alfa Romeo Montreal, which I've talked about before, is also one of my favorite designs. So he definitely has to be up there for me. And he penned the Gandini line, right? Like the single line, and you can tell it's his car right away. So I think he's up there for me. And then my last one will have to be, it's hard. It's hard to pick another one. It's just one, but I'm going to go with Leonardo Fioravanti at Ferrari. You know, 288 GTO, 308, and he's made some, you know, iconic designs. And when people think of Ferrari, they think of a wedge, but a little bit more curvaceous than Lamborghini, let's say. Whether it's the Testarossa as well, and you know he's done some great work. Honorable mentions would have to be Ian Callum, design. Yeah, Ian Callum's got some good ones. DB9 and, you know, a Jaguar the F-Type, and he's done some great work. And then also Sasha Slopunov for a newer one. He's helped with the Lamborghini Huracan, the Chiron, and, you know, Koenigsegg Gemera. He's done some great work. And the CC850 there. And then the last one, I think I would have to say as an honorable mention would be Luc Donkervold. Just because I really like the Murcielago. It's one of my favorite designs ever. And then I worked at Genesis for a little bit, and he designed the G70, and I think he did some great work recently at Genesis as well.
Amazing. Well, yeah. I'll give mine right now. I was scared listening to your guys' long list that I was going to lose all my picks, but I still saved a couple.
Awesome.
So one of the, of course, most iconic designers of all time, Giorgetto Giugiaro, hasn't quite been mentioned yet. So, you're talking the DeLorean, you're talking the Alpha Giulia, but you're also talking the Golf Mark One, which is, one of the most legendary designs, Lotus Esprit. The list goes on and on. And aside from cars, it also goes to mobile phones and cameras and a variety of other areas of design. So I think that's a really big one. Then bringing in some of my American heritage, I'm gonna talk about Harley Earl, who really was the founder of using clay modeling for car design, was the head of GM design behind the Corvette, which is obviously one of the most legendary American designs that still has, lasted even to this day, obviously in a much altered form. And he was also the influence that, gave the check mark to put those beautiful tail fins on the 50s cars that I think everyone looks back at 50s American cars and sees those tail fins, and that was a part of his world. Another one that I'm going to choose is Chris Bangle. Worked with BMW for a while in the 2000s. Was the designer behind the E46 3 Series, which is personally my favorite of the 3 Series generations. Super legendary period of time for BMW. And then one honorable mention I had is Giuseppe Fagoni, who was a designer for some old Delahaye's back in the pre-war era. I've been a huge fan of Delahaye for a long time, and I love those beautiful teardrop designs with the wheel covers that are always at the top at Pebble Beach, getting top marks. So I think that's going to have to round out my list.
It's such a difficult thing to do because then you would have to choose periods, I mean, we all touch different periods because from new designers, there's really good designers. I mean, there's many more nowadays than like back in time. But like, I mean, people never mention Japanese designers. Dude, I mean, the Datsuns, all the Toyotas,
Yeah, that's true.
all of those, the Mazdas, great cars. Great cars. I mean, they made history and changed a lot of stuff, Or Isigonis. I mean, that's the Mini designer, and he like built an icon,
Yeah.
So it's so big that it's really difficult to choose. You mentioned Chris Bangle. Chris Bangle makes me think of Davide Arcangeli. He unfortunately passed away in the 2000s also, but he was the designer of that 5 Series of that era. And he was in Pininfarina also, and he designed. So that's what I meant before. There's such and the amount of names in this industry that have like put a car over there that is iconic and stuff. It's crazy. So it's so difficult to choose.
Yeah. And another one we never even mentioned, who obviously isn't known for having an expansive list of automotive designs, but you could also mention Ferdinand Porsche, designing the original 911, which is still, probably the longest lasting design to be exactly what it was when he made it, even now.
Yeah.
That's true.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah. And like, Chris Bangle was ahead of his time. I mean, with the flame surfacing and then the Bangle butt, obviously it wasn't looked on like nicely at the time. Then you look back on it, and a lot of car companies started incorporating those type of designs. And then you look at like the Z1 that he did with the doors that come down into the in the sill and stuff. And when you start looking at design, there's the classic designers, right, that have pen something that everyone else builds upon, but then there's like the people who forward think, and they might not be appreciated in their time, and I think it's really cool to see that.
You see, it's experimental. It's experimental, like the Renault Twizy. It was or like the Audi A2. The A2, I think it came out very early, and the Class A came out and kicked its ass. And so it's also about timing and stuff, and like mentioning what we were talking before about the Ionic and stuff. who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we'll
Yeah.
see with time.
Absolutely. Well, Daniel, it has been a pleasure speaking with you and learning all about your background, talking design with you. I'm sure that our listeners are going to be fascinated hearing this whole experience. I guess one last final question that I have for you before we let you go is for someone who wants to be a car designer, wants to get into this industry, what would you say is your number one piece of advice that you would give them?
Be passionate, be patient, and choose wisely.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, I think it's a formula that applies for everything. If you want it, you will get it. But go
Yeah.
for it, you know, and do your most.
Definitely.
Amazing.
And on that note, I have one last question because I am selfish here. what, what is your number one favorite car design? Just one. I know it's hard. Trust me, I know it's hard, but
My number one. Damn, tough one. But if I gotta choose one from my list, and which I own, which is not actually a very car design like car, but I think as a project is fantastic. The Land Rover Series 3, like the Land Rover. I have a
I,
1981 Land Rover Series, and I think that car is amazing.
Yeah.
nice.
It's
Yeah.
another car that has stood out. I mean, I think that still there's 70% of them running around the world. So, I
Yeah.
mean,
That's an amazing car.
Yeah,
that
great answer.
it's a
Yeah.
tractor on wheels, but it's fantastic.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, have a great rest of your day, Daniel. It was a pleasure speaking with you, and hopefully we'll be able to get you back on sometime in the future to continue
Absolutely,
talking
absolutely.
cars.
Wish you the very best with this project. Amazing, and it'll hopefully keep growing. So I wish you the very best.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
All right, guys.
All right. See you
Have a
guys.
good one.
You too.